Okay, good evening and welcome to Just Daf It, Yeshiva YouTube. We're doing Nedarim Daf Ches tonight, number 88, almost at the conclusion of Maseches Nedarim. We'll start from the Mishnah on the bottom of Pei Zayin and Beis. The Mishnah says, Yodei ani sheyesh Nedarim, avay ani yodei sheyesh mefirin. I know my wife made a nether, I know my daughter made a nether. I didn't know that I have the power to be made for her nether. Someone's an Amaretz, doesn't know he can be made for the nether. And then he finds out. Yafer, the halacha is he can be made for the nether once he finds out he has 24 hours, right? We don't start the 24 hours just because he knew that there was a nether. He has to know that he has the power to be made for the nether because he didn't know at all. There's a complete lack of yediyah. Yediyah initiyesh mefirin. I know that I could be made for a nether. About any yodeyah is a nether. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's a nether. So here, it's a little different because in the previous case, he didn't know. He had no knowledge. Here, he has a suffix, right? I'm not sure if it's a nether or not. So that's machlokas, right? Meir omer lo yafer, because it's a suffix. So therefore, we to start counting 24 hours. Once 24 hours are over, even though he found out now that definitively it's a nether, because originally it was a suffix, so therefore the 24 hours started. And if it elapsed, you can't be made for anymore. The Chacham say no, a suffix yediyah is not considered a yediyah. And therefore, once he finds out definitively, then he has 24 hours to make for the nether. The Gemara says, V'raminahu. There's a question in Rameir Shita from Gemara Maseches Makos. Below rows, Pral Suma, Divrei Rameir Rabbi Yehuda, Rameir Omer L'Rabos Suma. The Gemara Makos says, Machlokas, Rabbi Yehuda, Rameir. Now, Gol is basically, for those people who never learn Maseches Makos, I think most people's first Masechta, they usually start learning is Maseches Makos because it's one of the shortest Masechtas and it's part of Nezikin, so it's only 24 blot, I believe. The second parak discusses if someone kills unintentionally. It talks about it in the Torah extensively. If someone kills unintentionally, right, they go to Gullus. You go to America. You go to Gullus. Gullus is, there's certain Ari Mikla when Eretz Yisrael is firmly established, and nowadays probably not. 3 cities in Eretz Yisrael, 3 cities in Eivra Yarden. There was a time after Yeshua conquered the land, they were functioning. You killed unintentionally, you run to the Ari Miklat, because if you're not in the Ari Miklat, the Goel Adam, the person you've killed, their family members, they could avenge his death and kill you, unless you're in an Ari Miklat. So you run to the Ari Miklat, and you're safe in the Ari Miklat, and you have to stay there. You have protection only in the Ari Miklat until the Kohen Gadol dies. Once the Kohen Gadol dies, then you can leave the Ari Miklat, and the Goel Adam no longer has permission to kill you. So it says over there in the Psukim, it says below rows, right? One of the ways of killing unintentionally, the classical case the Gemara Makos talks about, you're chopping trees down, you need lumber in the forest, and your timber, the trees falling down, but you didn't see there's a person there, right? You didn't see below rows. I mean, you could normally see, but you didn't see that there was a person there. So, according to Rabbi Yehuda, below rows comes to teach me that asuma, if you're actually blind, right, you can never see. So, and then you kill B'shogeg, right? You didn't know there was a person there. You have no way of knowing. I mean, you could have heard it, but, right, you didn't know the person was there. You're blind. He does not go to Golos. Meaning, presumably it means that the Goel Adam doesn't need, it's less than, right? It's less than unintentionally killing, because he can never know. So he doesn't have to go to Ari Mikla, and he's protected. But Rameir Omer L'Rabos Suma. Rameir says, no, below rows comes to include a Suma. He also is part of the Parsha. He's included in people that kill B'shogeg, that kill unintentionally, and he has to go to Ari Miklat and needs the protection of Ari Miklat. So what's the question? The question is as follows. In our Mishnah, when it comes to a partial idea, partial knowledge, right? Rameir says he's not sure if it's a nether. Rameir considers a partial knowledge like a full knowledge, and that's why the 24 hours start right away. However, when it comes to unintentionally killing someone, Rameir, right, without the pasuk, right, below rows, right, asuma is someone, right, normally killing unintentionally, right, is you're lacking some sort of knowledge, right? You're lacking that there's a person there when you're chopping down the tree. So, Rameir says, he says the extra words below rows, which are seemingly superfluous. We don't need those. It's clear from the Torah, the context of the Torah is talking about you lack knowledge. Below rows is extra, comes to include a suma. I mean, without the extra words in the pasuk, or a mayor would consider someone a summa, would not be included, would not have to go to Gullus, because his lack of knowledge is not like the lack of knowledge of a person who can see. Now, a person who's blind, right? He doesn't have complete absence of knowledge that a person's there, right? He can't see, but he can hear the person. So in a certain respect, he does have partial knowledge, right? Nonetheless, Rameir considers partial knowledge not to be full knowledge. And therefore, only because the pasuk is below rows and it's superfluous pasuk, that's why he includes the summa. Without that, partial knowledge is not considered knowledge. That's the question. So the Gemara in Peichav and Aleph answers, Amar Rava, Hacham Inyani Kra, Dekra, V'Hacham Inyani Dekra. It depends on the context of the pasuk, right? Rameir, he doesn't always say that partial knowledge is considered knowledge, or always partial knowledge is not considered knowledge. He doesn't tell you, the Gemara doesn't discuss by Nedarim, but it does discuss by Gullus. And the Gemara explains the machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Meir when it comes to the Gullus. Rabbi Yehuda savar gabe rotzeach ksiv asher yavos reya bayar. Right? It says an extra pasuk. He comes into the forest. That's the classical case. Chop down trees. Kol debar me'el yar. Right? Every person can walk into a forest, even a blind person. Sumanami bar me'el yaru. Even if you're blind, you can walk into a forest, right? You can walk with your walking stick. V'yamris, if you'll tell me below rows, which again is superfluous pasuk. The pasuk says he doesn't know about it, he didn't see. So it's extraneous pasuk. Below rows, the rabbos is a summa. That coming to include a summa. Miyai nafkala. I would have known that from the fact that the Torah goes out of its way. He goes in, he gives an example. You go into the forest to chop down trees. Why does the Torah give that example? Anyone can go into a forest, even a blind person. So the blind person was already, the Torah went out of its way to include a blind person. So therefore now the Torah is coming to exclude the blind person. Shma mina. Ela Shmamina, below Ros, probably Summa. So below Ros, according to Rabbi Yehuda, comes to exclude a Summa. He doesn't need Golas. Rameir argues, Ksiv Bli Das. Right? There's an extra puzzle also. It says Bli Das, without knowledge. Kol Debar Meda. Right? Bli Das, again, is an extraneous puzzle. So it includes anyone that has knowledge. V'summa la Bar Meda, blind person, he lacks a certain degree of knowledge. Via Amris below rows, probably summa. If I'm telling you below rows is coming to exclude a summa, if bleed das nafla, I would have already excluded him from bleed das. He's not someone who has complete knowledge. He lacks some knowledge. So therefore, el shmamina below rows or rabba is a summa. There's a classical rule in the Gemara that when you have ein miyad achar miyad el la rabba, when the Torah excludes something twice for no reason, therefore it really uses it. It's like a double negative, and therefore it's inclusive. And therefore he would go to Gullus. The Mishnah says, Amadir Hanami Chasno. Your daughter's getting married, beautiful chassan, but then you get into a fight with your wonderful son-in-law. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. I have what to say about Mishpacha magazine talked about this week about the shidduch crisis. They're on the case. 3 big askanim are on the case. They started off their initiative by getting someone to spill ink on in Mishpacha magazine, the feature article in Mishpacha magazine about how they're derived their plan and how they're going to go about their plan, and to get awareness out there. Tomorrow, when I discuss all in the Mishpacha, my weekly reactions to Mishpacha magazine, I'll tell you exactly what I believe the answer to the shidduch crisis is. But it's a 2-part process. In the second part of the process, I will tell you the non-financial aspect, what I believe is a solution to the shidduch crisis tomorrow in all in the Mishpacha. And then this week I'll be sitting down with my friend Shmuel Silver, hopefully. I'll be discussing the financial aspect to the shidduch crisis, because really it's a 2-part problem, in my opinion. I'm going to tell you, of course, what the Mishpacha magazine said tomorrow. And you'll have to decide, and that will be in Jewish Money. So you'll have both of those shows that I put on. You combine them together. Of course, I'll reference both in each of them. Mention briefly what the financial aspect is in all the Mishpacha, and in Jewish Money, reiterate what I said, what I'm going to say tomorrow on the Mishpacha. So you have that tomorrow. So you get married, your beautiful son-in-law, right? You're a rich boss, a rich askan who's working on shidduch crisis, but of course, since you're a rich guy, you got to get the best brisk guy for your daughter. So, and then he gets into a fight with his son-in-law. His son-in-law tells him he doesn't want to live in America. He wants to move to Eretz Yisrael, and he wants to sit and learn for the rest of his life, not going to the family business. So he can't break off the engagement. So he puts a neder on his beautiful son-in-law, who wrote to Bito, but he loves his daughter, right? Most, he wants to give his daughter money, spending money, so she can go and buy her Gucci clothes that she's so used to, accustomed to growing up. Omer La, he says to her, Hare Amos Heilun Esun Lach Matana. He doesn't want his son to get the money. Now, we know that Ishto Kegufo, and a woman's possessions, right? Mashkana Isha, Kana Baila. What a woman acquires, her husband also acquires. He says, the money, the package of money that I'm sending you, the check that I'm writing to you each month is yours as a present for you. I'm specifying, I don't want your husband to have any ownership over it. The money should exclusively go to things that go into your mouth. Apparently, he has to say it. We'll discuss in the Gemara what he has to say this last line. Seemingly only things which you can put in her mouth, the husband doesn't have access to. If it's money that she's using for Gucci clothing, he would access to. Rav says it's specific, that it's exacting in the Mishnah when it says you have to not only say your husband shouldn't have ownership over what I'm giving you, but also it should be exclusively for your mouth. Aval Amar Mashtirti Asi Kana Yasun Baal. However, if he says, he ends off, he says, I want to be exclusively for you. Your husband shouldn't have ownership over it. Whatever you want to do with it, do with it. You want to buy Gucci clothing, buy Gucci clothing. You want your sushi, go buy your sushi. If you say that, the husband acquires it. The Shmuel says, this is how he passes again. Afilu Amar Mashtirti Asi Lo Kana Yasun Baal. Even if he adds off, right? Do whatever you want with it, right? It belongs to the woman, and the husband does not have ownership, even though normally Mashakana, Isha, Kana Baila, here we don't say that. Maskiv La Rabbi Zera, we paskin like Shmuel. There is a way to give to your daughter. You're a rich guy. You can give money you can write a check to your daughter and specify on the envelope only for my daughter, not for my son. And it works. Maskiv La Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera says, Rabbi Zera asked the following question. Kaman Azza, Pechet Beis on the top. Kaman Azza Hashmaisa de Rav. Who does Rav hold like? Rav has a very unique shita. You have to be very specific. Only food that goes into our mouth. Rameir, must hold like Rameir. The Amar Yad Ishakat Baila. He holds that. Now Rameir never says this. The Gemara is assuming Rameir says this because all Rameir says is Mesechus Kedusha and Daf Kav Gimel. If you look in the Masoras Hashas, this is where he quotes from. He says by an Eved Knaini, Yad Eved Ki Yad Rabo, right? Meaning the ownership of a man over his Eved Knaini, his slave, his non-Jewish slave, he literally owns the body of that person, right? A man he owns the possessions of his wife. He doesn't own the body of his wife, right? So the Gemara is attributing that Rameir might even say that. He even say that the husband has ownership over the limbs of his wife. Now we know a couple dapim ago we said that the woman could be makdish her own hands because her hands are non-rishus. So the Gemara at this point is assuming that Rameir might extend that. Rav, right? Where did Rav come from? It must be Rameir would extend what he said by Yavid Knaini to an Isha as well. Raminahu of Raisa, Ketza Mishtafim Maboy. There's going to be a problem with Rameir Shita, meaning assuming Rameir, he didn't say this ever, but assuming Rameir, what he says in Masechus Kedusha applies to a woman also. Ketza Mishtafim Maboy, this is a Gemara in Masechus Eruvin, right? Shiduve Mavos is basically similar to Eruvi Chatzeros. For those people who don't know Masechus Eruvin, and don't need to know Masechus Eruvin because most Jewish communities have an Eruv, right? You think you just put up some strings or something like that and you can just carry it. It's not so simple. Yes, that does help, but if you don't have one of those strings around, you don't have, basically what they're doing with the strings is they're making a big wall. So it's basically one house or one, your city is like one house, so it's okay. But if you don't have that string around, so you have to, if you want to walk from your yard to your friend's yard, you have to do an Eruv Chatzeros, and basically have to join together, show that you're one Rishus for Shabbos, that you're one domain, you're not two domains, because the Rabbanon were afraid that if you carried from your friend's yard to your yard, or your yard to your friend's yard, you might carry from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, which is an Rishus HaRaisa. So they said, in order to not violate the Isra D'Rabbanan, do Eruv Chatzeros, give one person each person gives a box of matzahs to each other, or one person, we'll see in the Gemara that you don't have to actually give, each person have to give a matzah. One person can take a box of matzahs and be mezakeh, right? Acquire ownership for other people through someone else, through an agent. So the same thing by Mabuos. Mabuos is basically a public street, which is not a Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah has to be 16 amos wide and also has to have 600,000 people that pass through that street, either daily or maybe weekly or monthly. But let's say you have a small street and it's a quiet street. So it's not going to be Rosh Hashanah. It's going to be a Rosh Hashanah also. Similarly, just like there are gozer, you can't take stuff from one yard to another yard. There also are gozer, you can't take stuff from your yard or from your house to the mavoy, to the public street. Now, there's a lot of houses in the public street. Same way they entitled you to do Erev Chatzeros, they also did something called Shitufe Mabuos. If you want to carry from your house to the public street, which is a quiet street and not Rosh Hashanah, you can do that similar ways by Erev Chatzeros. You join together either through some bread or some wine here. We'll talk about wine, a barrel of wine. So, how do you join together in a maboy? So you take a barrel, let's say of wine. It's very complicated for every person to give a bottle of Kedem grape juice to one person and put it in one person's house. That would work also. But to make it much simpler, you have one barrel of wine, or you have one bottle of Kedem grape juice would be okay. You want to give a tribute and you want to acquire it, you want to give ownership, not just, right, you want to everyone in the mavoy, that everyone should jointly own it. This belongs to the entire Bnei Mavoy. Right? To do, if you heard of the concept, Zachan Adam Shelo B'fanav, right? The Zachan Adam, you could acquire ownership for somebody if it's beneficial to him through somebody else. Even the guy doesn't know about it. Shelo B'fanav, he doesn't know about it. He'll never know about it. Right? If you want to go pick up something, a mitzvah, you find something in the street, you want to mezakeh it for somebody else, you could pick it up and acquire it for somebody else, or give it, or in this case, you own the bottle of Kedem grape juice. So you give it to a third party, and you say you're acquiring it, right, on behalf of all the other people in this maboi who reside in this street. You could do that. However, they have to be someone who are not, you don't have ownership over their bodies. So you have to give Eved or Shifcha. Eved is a male or Shifcha is a female maidservant who are Jewish, right? Because you don't have the same ownership. You have a Jewish slave or non-Jewish slave. Or you have children that are older, over bar mitzvah, over bat mitzvah. Your wife is independent of you. Now this is a Stam Mishnah, Maseches Erevim. And Stam Mishnah we usually attribute to Rabbi Meir, right? It's an anonymous Mishnah. If you say that Rameir would extend his concept of Yav Eved Kiyad Rabo, he would extend that to Yad Ishta Kiyad Baila. How does it work to give it to his wife? He's like giving it to his second hand. It's like me passing something from one hand to another hand. That's not going to be good. You can't make people possess it through that. You need a third party to help other people acquire it. Amar Rabba answers, even though technically it's possible Rameir would say that. Moder and Meir Inyan Shituf, the Kevan L'schus La'acherim, whom Yad Baila Zachia. Shituf is different when it comes to, like the case in our Mishnah, where the father-in-law wants to give his daughter some money and doesn't want his son-in-law to acquire it. Here, it's a case of, right, in the case of the Mishnah, you want to give the money to your daughter so she could have it. Here, you're giving the bottle of Kedem grape juice or the barrel of wine to your wife, not that she should acquire it, because she can't acquire it, because she's you. But you're giving it to her, to mezakeh, to other people, to acquire, act as an agent on a third party. So Rabbi is saying there's a difference, right? And to act as an agent for someone else, even though she's really you, right? And technically you couldn't give to your other hand, but she's not completely like you. Even Rabbi Meir would say that the hand of, right, an Eved is like his master. The hand of a woman is like her husband. It doesn't mean that she's exactly the same thing, that he's like swallowed his wife. He didn't swallow his wife. It just means that he has the rights, right? We talked about by Dinei Mamnis, there's a difference between ownership of the physical object and ownership of the rights to that person. So he has ownership of the rights of her body, but he doesn't own ownership physically over her body. So the gift of one hand to another hand, that's physically your own body, but she could act as an agent for somebody else. So the Gemara persists. The Gemara asks, Ezi ve'Ravina, Ravina asks Ravashi, Elu shezachin lahen al yidei beno. These are the people that you can do eruv v'chatzeros, shtuvim avos. These are the people, following people you can use as an agent to mezakeh, to help other people acquire. Al yidei beno ubito agdolim. Right, your older children. Ad v'shivchas ha'evrim. Ve'elu she'ein zachin lahem. And the following people you can't use. Al yidei beno ubito aktanim. If you have children who are under bar mitzvah. Right, but Avda v'shivchas ha'knainim, we have it or shivchas, those are they're not Jewish. V'ishto, and your wife. So here, this Brisa seems to say what? The opposite. That your wife you can't do it. We just said before your wife you could do when it comes to her acting as an agent for shitufin mavus. We're talking about the same thing over here. Elam Ravashi, so Ravashi concedes masnisin, meaning in the first case, in Erev, in the first Mishnah we call an Erev, which we assume is Ray Meir, but that's talking about a case where the wife has actually property. She owns property. Now, we learn in Maseches Ksuvos when a wife has property prior to a marriage and she marries a husband, the husband takes over that property. However, if they're married and the husband wants to gift his wife with property, you can do that. So he gave her as a gift, he's a real estate tycoon, and he said, you can have one house, you can have one yard in the street, one house in the street for yourself. And here, over here, she definitely owns the property, right? She owns the property. Even if you want to say, like Reb Meir possibly says, that the husband has the rights to the physical hand of his wife. However, here we're not talking about a movable object. We're talking about property over here. And here we're talking about a case where, right, a specific case where he gave her own chotzer, her own house. She has her own house over here. So therefore, right, she's one of the participants that need to share in the mavoi, right? Because she needs for herself, right? She has to, all the people on the street have to join together in this barrel of wine. And she's one of the people who owns property over here. So because she owns property and she needs to have an ownership over there, so therefore she acquires from her husband. Yes, her husband has the rights to normally even her body and certainly the wages that she earns. However, he gave this property to her, so she owns this property. So therefore, since she's someone who owns property over here, because she can acquire for herself, therefore she can act as an agent to acquire for other people. That's the conclusion of today's daf. I don't know, tonight it felt different. I was explaining it much better than usual. Even though I usually do it very quick and very good, but I really spoke everything out very clearly. Should be Hashem's will that continues like this. Stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion, where I talk more about the nature, a very strange Gemara. It seems to indicate that a mayor would hold that a husband technically owns the hands of his wife, owns the body of his wife. The problem is the Gemara earlier on said that the husband does not own the hands of his wife. That's why she can makdish her hands, right? Her ma'aseh adayim, her wages, or the food she cooks belongs to her husband, but not her actual hands. And second of all, it's a little preposterous for the Gemara to assume that we extend Reb Meir, where he says there's definitely a difference between Evet Knaini and a wife. Evet Knaini, you really own, it's like karkos, the Gemara. It's like you're owning your own land, right? The Gemara compares owning Evet Knainim to land, right? There's different kinyanim you do on a Evet Knaini than you do on a woman. So it's very strange the Gemara just assumes Rav would say like Reb Meir, and Reb Meir would extend what he says that Yad Evet ki Yad Rabbo would be the same thing as Yad Ishto ki Yad Baila. We'll explore that more in Ian of Ben Sion coming up next.